So thank you everyone for joining. Like Lisa mentioned, we're gonna be talking about elevating your security posture. In other works, it's gonna be more about how you can identify gaps and how you can also measure your cloud SIEM. So let me just move ahead to the next slide. So who I am, or basically, I am Marvin Valerio. With over 8 years in cybersecurity, I have had the opportunity to work as a security analyst, as a detection engineer, and security architect in the past, which has given me a strong background in threat detection, security system, designing effective security solutions. In my current role as a senior technical engineer, basically, I am the trusted advisor for my customers. I focus on helping organizations enhance their security posture and make the most of our platform to tackle evolving threats and improve incident response. So let's continue with the next slide. This is going to be our agenda, or the agenda for today's. Basically, I'm going to be just explaining super quick about the difference and what make our cloud scene different. And then the main topic for today is going to be improving security posture, and how I'm going to be jumping to 4 different approaches, the strategies that we can use to identify gaps and identify ways that we can measure and we can basically improve our current SIEM. That one is going to be matter gap analysis. Another one is something that I call long alerting logs. Another one is going to be smart rules that are going to be basically focusing on smart rules, but also in custom rules based on your necessity and your priorities. And then I'm going to be jumping into the rule tuning. That tuning is always extremely important. So that's going to be our topics for today. So the Sumo Logic Cloud SIEM, what makes us different? Basically, I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna talk about this too much, but I want to quickly highlight what makes Sumo Logic in our cloud SIEM different. Specifically, our approach of starting with records, moving to signals by entities, and then generating insights based on advanced correlation, and how this truly helps organizations. So let's do a quick exercise together, just to give you like an example about how this works. So imagine you are running a security checkpoint at a massive airport today. You have like 10 billion passengers walking through your checkpoint. Hiding among them are like 55 dangerous individuals. Your job is to find them before they cause harm. So but here's the catch. Your tools are outdated, are not working properly, are not doing like a really good correlation. So they highlight only 9.8 millions of people as suspicious. That's one out of every 1,000 passengers. So it's still way too many to handle effectively. You are overwhelmed, you're overwhelmed, your team is wasting time investigating harmless people, and the real threats might slip through. So how would you prioritize? How long do you think it would take to go through 9.8 million alerts, or what do you feel confident that you didn't miss anything critical, right? So this is where Sumo Logic comes in, and it's like an advanced scanner at your checkpoint. Instead of flagging millions of possibilities, it filters through the crowd with incredible precision. It weeds out false alarms, ignore the harmless, and leave you with just the 55 dangerous individuals you need to address. So this is pretty much the approach that Sumo Logic is trying to put in your hands, and what we think is adding a lot of value. Me with the experience in different vendors and different tools, I can say like this approach is something that I really like, that for me make a lot of sense. But like every single tool, um, it's crucial to tailor your rules to your environment and needs, identify gaps, and tune with a well-established process to avoid any kind of false positive, right? So what motivated me to run this session is that one of the questions that I have been hearing a lot lately from my customer is, hey Marvin, how we can mature our cloud scene? How can I identify if I'm doing great? How can I identify if I have gaps in logs or detections? So that's basically why we're gonna be jumping to, let's say, different strategies, different approaches to identify all of these things, and put or create like a strategy based on the resources that you have, of course, about how you can improve your SIEM. So let's jump into the next slide. Um, So why improving security posture is essential? It's going to help us reduce risk. It's going to help us with compliance and regulatory requirements. It's going to be and help us with cost savings because we are going to decrease. We're going to make sure that we are just going and getting the high fidelity alerts, high fidelity insights, right? It's going to help us to enhance resiliency. It's going to help us safeguarding reputation, right? So this is gonna be, like I said, for today's session, I'll be focusing on 4 specific use cases, but keep in mind there are many different ways to approach this. First, I'll start by showing how we can use our MITRE attack graph to identify potential gaps. I'll dive into smart rules, walking through a couple of examples. For example, how to create custom rules for specific behaviors we want to monitor closely. Let's say you got like you had like an incident 2 weeks ago and you want to create something custom to create insights right away, so you can create custom rules in how to identify those use cases, how to transition from static rules to anomaly-based rules, kind of smart rules, and how this shift can improve our detection capabilities. Next, we'll cover an exercise using non-alerting logs, where we'll identify logs that are being sent to the SIEM, but for some reason, whether due to mapping issues, missing fields, or any kind of, or maybe an absence of out-of-the-box rules or anything, you are not creating signals. So you have the logs, you have the data sources sending the records, sending the records into, or the logs into our cloud SIEM. But when you review, when you do an analysis, you see that those specific sources are not creating signals in the last 90 days. So something should be happening, right? And you need to, at some point, identify, do some troubleshooting, or create something custom to basically start filling those gaps. And finally, we'll go over a tuning overview where we will explore how to leverage out-of-the-box content, but I'm gonna be focusing my attention in some of the, let's say, custom content that you also can create, and that's gonna give you like a single pane of glass to do some tuning and get a lot of insights about that. Okay, so let me just go to the next slide. So we're gonna start with the MITRE gap analysis. So MITRE gap analysis is gonna help us to identify coverage weaknesses. It's going to help us to prioritize remediation efforts, enhance threat detection. So let me just open the Sumo Logic here. I'm going to be just going into the dashboard so we can see it together. So I hope you're familiar with this feature that we have in our cloud SIEM, but our MITRE attack coverage basically is going to provide 3 key visualization that help us assess and improve our security posture. The first one is going to be recent activity. This view shows the coverage for your organization based on the signal received over the last 180 days. It updates daily to reflect the latest findings from your environment. This view is going to help us to see which tactics and techniques have been detected based on recent activity. Then we have the all community activity. All community activity basically is going to show coverage for all customers who use the same cloud SIEM sources as your organization based on all signals received across all instances over the past 180 days. Customer data is going to be anonymized, obviously, for privacy reasons. But this is going to be really helpful because, for example, by comparing this to recent activity, we can identify which potential techniques are covered by your data sources but have not yet been detected in your environment. And then we have our theoretical coverage that basically this is going to show the coverage for organization as if all data ingestion were perfect and every enabled rule generated at least one signal. So this theoretical view helps us understand what additional custom could be beneficial. If this view is selected, the vendor basically product is going to be filter is going to be disabled. As you see, we cannot play with the vendor product because this is just like a theoretical coverage. So this is gonna be really helpful. And how this is gonna help us? It's gonna help us to identify missing signals or rules, to access the specific data sources that we're sending, because at the end of the day, we can have like a coverage, right? But maybe we say like, okay, we don't have coverage for this specific behavior, for this specific tactic or technique. But maybe it's because I am not sending any logs. Maybe I have rules that could basically detect that kind of behavior, but at the end of the day, maybe I don't have those logs. For example, I'm not sending any log source that is gonna give me some access keys or things like that. So I'm not gonna be able to detect something like that, right? So this is really useful for that as well. It's useful also to identify if we have let's say some rules that maybe we consider we could retag, in the sense like, for example, if I go to a specific rule and I say like, okay, I believe this rule should be able to monitor or to detect this specific tactic and technique. But when I reviewed the rule, I see like this rule was tagged for a different tactic or technique that maybe I don't consider is the right one, because at the end of the day, MITRE attack and the tagging that we're adding at some point is gonna be based on what you at some point what you consider. Sometimes I see rules that maybe could also be detecting some other potential techniques, but maybe it were just target out of the box for this specific one. So this is like a lot of different ways that we can also make sure that our rules are tagged properly, that we could identify based on the gaps if data sources, or if we are missing any data source, to monitor those kind of techniques. And also something that is extremely important and I want to highlight this, because I was discussing it with one of my customers, is like we have like a rule in our SIEM that is called normalized security rule. This normalized security rule is going to be, and let me just go into that specific rule. That specific rule is pretty much the rule that is forwarding all the different alerts coming from threat detection tools. Like which tools? It's gonna be like WarDuty, it's gonna be like CrowdStrike, it's gonna be like Defender, right? We know that if we have CrowdStrike, we're gonna have a lot of different detections, and we can do a lot of detection based also in tactics and techniques, right? So something that we can also do is just making sure that that specific rule is getting the right tags. Or if you want to create, let's say, custom rules coming from CrowdStrike and just tag it and do the detection based on MITRE and MITRE tactic and techniques, you can also create custom rules based on that. And that's gonna give you like a better perspective and visibility in terms of MITRE tactic and techniques. This is the rule that I was talking about. This rule pretty much is getting all the threat detection alerts from those kind of tools and just forwarding that into a specific signal at some point. So this is another way that you can also do and start doing some manual work at some point, but it's gonna provide better visibility and more realistic visibility in your environment. I know that our product team is working to provide that visibility, but right now it's gonna be like another way to go and do it, just to provide the right visibility. Okay, so let's jump to the next slide. It's gonna be about the smart rules. So a smart rule is gonna help us with enhanced precision. It's gonna help us to adapt to the different threat patterns and to the different, let's say, priorities or use cases that your organization has. And also it's gonna help us to optimize resource use. So this is gonna start with this example. And I'm gonna and we can at some point do this exercise. Let's say in some cases, we may not want to wait for the entire correlation process to complete. We know that Sumo Logic works with records, then signals, and then we have like a detection threshold. Our detection threshold by default or out of the box is gonna be last for or 14 days and a threshold or 12, right? So sometimes maybe, and let me put this example, right? Maybe I'm running, or I have like or my infrastructure is just AWS, I got like an incident about credential exfiltration a couple of weeks ago, and now I start using the Guard Duty, and I want to be notified anytime that I have, or I want to create like an insight right away when I have, like, for example, a finding coming from Guard Duty that is gonna be it's gonna be high, and it's gonna be related with credential exfiltration. So how I can do something like that? That's gonna basically involve different process, and it's gonna be different steps. First, we're gonna create like a custom rule. Then we're gonna create like a custom insight using that rule, and then we need to tune the the general or the normalized security rule that I was mentioning, because at the end of the day, like I said, this specific rule is pretty much getting all of these threat detections rules, or all the sources and alerts that are sending alerts or detections or findings into Sumo, and it's just forwarding it to the signal. So if we don't tune it, we're going to have basically two rules doing at the end of the day, doing the same thing. So how I take that approach? First thing that we need to do is understand the specific tool, right? In this case, it's going to be Guard Duty. So I'm going to find all the different findings related with identity access management. I'm going to find that I have a couple of findings that are going to be related with exfiltration. Another thing that I'm going to do is going to take advantage of the CIP capabilities and all the good stuff, and all the, let's say, the threat hunt, or all the specific queries that we can do to understand what we currently have. So then I just jump into my CIP and start running like a query based on historical data to identify if I had any kind of finding in the last 30 days about credential exfiltration. So I was running like a query, going to the source category. I was just extracting some fields to get the finding name and the severity, and then I was doing some filtering, looking into any finding name that contains credential exfiltration and where the severity is more than 7, because the severity levels of Guard Duty are gonna be, or the high severity levels for Guard Duty is gonna be 7 to 8.9. So it's how I identify that we got 33 um, findings in the last 3 days. And then what I did was just go into my CSE and basically create this specific rule. So based on what I know, based on that I already identify that specific, let's say, behavior, I knew that this is gonna be the best way to go. So I was creating the rule, and the rule is gonna be using this specific syntax. It's gonna be metadata, just vendor, Amazon AWS, metadata product equal Guard Duty. Then I'm gonna put the detailed severity equal or greater than 7. That is gonna give me just and only the high findings. And then I was using this match expression to just got the credential exfiltration alerts or findings. So this is not, sometimes some customers say like, hey, Marvin, I mean, we don't have resources. We don't have enough resources. Maybe we need to just identify what are the best way to go, because we need to learn like a syntax. This is going to take time. But something that is really nice, it's like we have this specific documentation here, and just let me find it here. And this is going to give you all the basically the ways that you can use to create rules or customize your rules in your CSE. So this is going to be really good. This is going to give you this is going to just show you and give you a lot of examples. For example, if you want to do greater or equal, like I was doing with that rule, that's going to give you a lot of examples. So it's going to be kind of easy to go into 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 your rule and create the specific logic, right? Another recommendation that I always provide is like, if you are in your SIEM, if you are able to identify the records, it's gonna be really, really, really nice to say like, okay, I'm gonna go to my records. I'm gonna be, just let me show you real quick. Let's see if I can have it here. So you can also at some point, if you know that you are sending this record to your basically SIEM, and you wanna at some point get some help and don't start creating this rule from scratch, you can at some point, so let me go to records, yeah. Just look into those same records, because at the end of the day, in this case, Guard Duty find this is gonna be pretty much the same thing. So you're gonna be like metadata product is Guard Duty, and you can just run it like for the time that you may consider. You're gonna be able to get this. It's gonna be really easy when you have a records as for as an example, because you can just go and say like, okay, one create like a rule for Amazon AWS for this specific product, but I'm gonna start from the overall, and I'm gonna create like a really good structure for my rule. So I wanna start creating just and adding the vendors. So you can just click here. You're gonna get copy expression, and you're gonna go and start playing with this. For example, if I do this, I remove it, I just paste what I just copied. That's gonna give me the right expression for my rule and what my rule is gonna support. Then when I have my rule, we're gonna give you a lot of different options to test your rule to make sure that this rule is not gonna cause a mess, right? It's not gonna cause like 1,000 signals in 5 minutes, something like that, right? So you can test your expression. You can go and click here, test rule expression. You can run it. And again, you're gonna test it based on historical data. So in the last 7 days, I'm running this query. I want to understand at some point how this rule is gonna behave in the future. So I could expect if this is gonna be noisy or not. And then you're gonna get all the findings in the last 7 days related with this specific behavior. So you can get like an idea if this is gonna be noisy or this is gonna be something that is gonna add value, because at the end of the day, it's not just to add custom rule, it's to add value and high fidelity to those specific rules, right? And then we have another way to configure this. We can just configure this to start creating signals right away, or we can just click here in prototype rule, and this pretty much is gonna, sorry, to contribute to insights, but now, or we have this other option that prototype rule is gonna give us the option to create signals, but those signals are not gonna contribute to your insights. So it's gonna be really good for testing. You can just configure your rule like a prototype, and then one week later, you can just come here and see how many signals it was created. So you can test, we're giving you the options to test it with historical data, but also to test it and put it just in a prototype mode. So you can just make sure that the rule is gonna be adding value and it's not gonna be doing a mess for you, right? Okay, so let's jump into another example here. This is gonna be about the Opta, and this is about what I was mentioning about how you can go from a generic or a static rule to a smart rule. Let me give you this example. We have this rule out of the box that again, our team is doing an amazing job giving you like a amazing rules out of the box. But at the end of the day, if you have the opportunity to customize those rules, that's gonna be better for you. So let's say we go to this brute force attempt rule. We see this rule, okay, this is like a threshold rule. And pretty much this is just like excluding a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, what this is doing, the logic is just authentication, log on, and when it is false or it was failure. And then we have like a threshold that is gonna be matches at least 10 records within 1 day. This is kind of a static rule. So how we could improve something like this? How we can just jump from something like this to start playing with the different rules, because our SIEM, and this is another important topic, I don't want to go super deep in every single um, type of rule, but we have a lot of different type of rules. And another way to mature your environment is going to be if my 90% of rules are just match rules, I can start playing with chain rules. I can start creating something around threshold. I can start creating something with outliers. And that's gonna diversify basically my detection, right? And that's gonna give us it's gonna put us in a better position, right? So for example, in this case, I'm jumping from a threshold rule to an outlier. That, in my opinion, for something like this is gonna be a smart rule. So I'm taking, like in this case, an Opta as an example, but I'm getting a rule that is gonna be doing the same thing that we just saw in terms of logic. I'm getting all the single sign-on logs, and when the outcome result is gonna be failure, and then with this outlier capability, I'm gonna be able to say, like, let's build a daily baseline. Let's build that baseline for this specific threshold. Let's start learning about that specific threshold, and then we're gonna be creating and alerting and creating signals based on what it's really happening in your environment. Because at the end of the day, sometimes when we create brute force attempts and that kind of thing, just because the threshold for 10 is gonna be recommended, maybe your environment is working different. Maybe the anomaly is not 10, maybe the anomaly is just what is really, let's say, based on what is happening in your environment. With this type of rules, you can, again, create like that baseline. The rule is going to learn about the fail logins for your users in the last 7 days, and then it's going to be able to create like a signal anytime that someone is going out of the normal, and that's going to give us like a more smart detection and more customized detection based on your environment, right? Okay, let's jump real quick into non-learning logs. So non-learning logs basically uncover hiding threats, enhance rule coverage, and proactive defense. Let's jump into this specific dashboard, and let me explain this real quick. This is like a custom dashboard. This is something that I was creating because this is helping me to understand what's going on with an environment. So for example, to my left, what I have is all the data sources that I'm forwarding to my cloud SIEM. And to my right, what I have is all the product and vendors that were creating signals in the last 30 days. I can just extend this to the last 7 days, for example. So with this, it's gonna be kind of easy. Obviously, we have a lot of data sources here because this is like a demo environment, but if I know my environment, it's gonna be extremely easy to say like, okay, I can just scroll down and I'm gonna be identifying like I have Opta sources here, but I don't see any Opta signals in the last 7 days. So what's happening here, right? Do I have rules for Opta? My logs are going, are being mapped correctly in by the log mappers, or what's happening. So you can start doing that kind of analysis. Or for example, I was doing like analysis for one of my customer a few weeks ago about a specific source. And basically what we did was just modify a little bit the log mapper, and that log mapper start working with a lot of different out of the box rules. Or maybe we have like a weird and different log source, and we need to understand or create any custom rule for it, right? So basically, how we can do this is like in this case that I noticed that Opta is not working properly. I just can just go to the log mappers. I can identify if what is being mapped or what are the records that I'm sending. And with this, I can identify, for example, that from Opta, the only events or records that I'm sending are related with SSO. I'm not sending nothing about the threat detection model that Opta provides. So I can start asking questions about if I have that enabled or if I should just receive those specific logs or records into my CSE. Same thing with the different models like multi-factor authentication. I don't have nothing about that. What's happening, if I need to make sure that I'm sending the right logs from Opta, if my configuration is working properly. And you can start doing all of that kind of analysis and troubleshooting. And that's gonna give you a lot of different answers about what's happening or why that specific source that I'm expecting contribute or create signals is not creating nothing for us, right? It's gonna be like basically gap analysis based on data sources. Like I said, that I'm sending to my cloud SIEM, but are not being detected, or the logs are not contribute or are not at this point um, being used for any detection rule. So let me just move now. Before going with rule tuning, I just want to go back real quick to my example of the guard duty, because with these custom rules, I believe, or with the opt-out, in this case, with these custom rules that I was showing you about the guard duty instance credential exfiltration, right? Something that I was using, I was creating something extremely custom for a specific behavior. But then I was just creating like a rule. If I decide like this is critical for me, and it could be for different use cases. Let's say you are using Defender or you're using CrowdStrike, and you wanna create like an insight right away when a detection is related with ransomware, you're gonna do this specific process. And those kind or those type of use cases are the ones that I always recommend my customers to say like, okay, our correlation, our advanced correlation is really great, it's amazing. But if at some point you have like something that is extremely critical, let's create an insight right away. Don't wait for the threshold detection to meet and just create the insight. If you wanna create an insight right away, we receive an alert, a detection related with ransomware or for something like this that is maybe related with an incident I had, anything, any use case that you consider critical for your organization. Again, the first thing you're gonna do is create the rule, and then you're gonna have your custom rule. But then you need to go here into the custom insights, and then you're gonna be basically creating like a custom insight. That custom insight is gonna be just based on your specific rule. So for example, you can just came here. Let me just show you real quick here. Go to rules. So we can just take the specific, or how we could create like a custom rule. We're gonna be able to, let's see, take this specific rule that I was creating, like, right, the custom rule that I create. I'm gonna go to the create the custom insight. I'm gonna use that specific rule. I'm gonna just add the rule. I'm gonna put like in any order in this case, and then the description, the name of the insight. And this pretty much is gonna be, when I create this is gonna be basically creating like an insight right away. We got like a, or basically a signal is created from that specific rule. It's not gonna wait for that, the detection threshold to be met. And this is the use cases that we want, right? These kind of things related with an incident, these kind of things related with ransomware, something that is critical, and you know that you need to take immediately attention on that. And then something in, like I said, there are like three specific steps: create the custom rule, create the custom insight, and then we have the, let's say, the general rule for detection. So we need to tune it. And if you know, we can just go and create like a rule tuning here. So we can, for example, go to the rule tuning, and we can just create something like this. That I was pretty much adding that specific custom rule that I create. And then I was associating this to this specific rule, to the normalized security rule, and I was excluding that from that specific rule. So with that, I was able to create my custom rule, but avoid any kind of duplication or duplicity with the original rule that was getting all of the threat detection alerts and just creating those alerts into a specific signal. Okay, let's run with the latest topic, that is rule tuning. I mean, rule tuning is extremely important for any, I believe, any organization that is using a SIEM. We are providing a lot of out-of-the-box content that is really good. For example, I'm not gonna go super deep with this, but I'm providing like the CSC app. So you're gonna be able to go into all of these dashboards to start looking into the record analysis, to the signals analysis, signals by product, signals by different specific entities. Also, we are providing the insight trainer that is using some kind of It's pretty much using like an algorithm to basically analyze how you're closing your specific insets, and based on that, it's gonna give you like a good let's say recommendations about tuning. So it's really good. I know our product team is also improving that, and I know it's gonna be really useful for every single customer. But also something that I want to show you is how you can at some point also, and again, I know that for some customers is like the learning curve for queries, it's gonna take some time, but I always recommend to take some time to learn the query language in the CIP, because for the security it's gonna be really helpful. Also, we are now we're gonna deliver soon, or we're gonna release soon, sorry, our copilot, and also we have another um, beta program that is related with autocomplete queries, and that's going to also help you with all of this. But for example, if you have the capability, or you can work also with your account team, with your technical account engineer, to create something that is going to be more like a single pane of glass. And it's going to give you, in this case, I create something that is giving you the top signals by every single important item that is going to give you, let's say, insights about what you need to do, or what you need to customize, or what you need to improve in your environment to avoid and to create high fidelity signals and at the end of the day, high fidelity insights. So for example, if we can see here, we are going to see like, okay, these are my top signals. I have like 21,000 signals for this rule in the last 24 hours. I have a lot of DCP bucket modified, DCP. So if we take a look into this type of rules, let's go and take a look into those rules real quick. If we see this type of rules, what we're going to notice is like these rules, some of them, they have severity of 0, because at the end of the day, they are going to be like audit rules. It's not like, it's just like an audit rule. It's just like a change. It's just like a something was changing, and I'm not saying this is not important. This is super important. If this is going to be correlated with something or a behavior that is going to be discussing like a damage is going to be related with this, that's going to give us a lot of insights, right? But maybe what you can see when you jump into these rules that are just like a severity of 0 and that are audit related is like, what is the importance of this to me, right? And how I can just improve it in case that you want, like what, like doing what, like tuning the rule. If you decide like, okay, I have this specific group of people, this specific team that is allowed to do this, I don't want to get maybe a signal when that specific team is making these changes, because I really know some people doesn't feel good with that, and that's, so they want to get visibility about everything. But maybe you can create like a threshold, or you can just modify the basic rule and just adjust it to what is really happening with your environment, and what are your policies, and what is basically happening in your environment. So it's pretty much how you can improve something like this. And you can do the same thing. For example, this is something like, it's going to give you the top signals by user, the top signals by host name, the top signals by source IP, destination IP. So it's going to give you a lot of insights. And when you're going to be able to create something like this, it's going to be able to, you're going to be able to tune in an easy way. You're going to get the insights in a just single pane of glass. Is going to be better. It's why I always recommend and basically help my customers with this kind of things, because I know this is going to be really helpful for anyone that is trying to tune or improve or mature your environment, the environment. This is also helpful for a lot of things. Let's say if I know that, I don't know, John Smith is something that I want to understand what's doing, I can just filter that, and I'm gonna get all the specific signals for that specific user, so I can identify if maybe this is something that is expected, is not expected, this username is this, has this title, and it was doing all of this work, so I can just tune this, or I can just do or suppress for some time this specific behavior, so I want to avoid some kind of false positive or noise, right? For tuning, another thing that I always recommend is going to be, if you have the resources, because we know that sometimes we have limitations, it's always to create like a strategy. It's always create like a process in your internal teams, because at the end of the day, tuning, in my opinion, is what makes your environment accurate, is what makes your environment like feasible. I don't want an analyst receiving like hundreds of of insights per day, right? I want my analysts to get just like the specific insights, and he's gonna have the time to do like a really good analysis on those insights. In not that it's gonna be overwhelming, it's gonna be not gonna be able to run like a really good analysis, right? We are giving you that like a base list and out of the box, but if you can, using all of these capabilities, all of these strategies, you can improve something like that, I know you're gonna be in a really good position. So that's pretty much was basically the intention for today. Just basically show you different ways, different approaches. Again, that based on my experience, I notice and I know could be really beneficial for you if you want to, or you are going into the direction to basically improve or mature your cloud SIEM.